everybody, this is Professor Tannenbaum. I just wanted to take a few minutes today to give you a brief overview of Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory. This is a theory that is described in your book, but it's kind of a brief description. And I really like to use this theory as a model as we go throughout the course, because it really is just such a good way of getting people to think about how complicated human development is. You know, people often want really simple answers to complicated questions. So they'll say things like, well, why do people do drugs? Well, you know, if there was one reason why people did drugs, we would have solved that problem by now, right? Clearly, there's a much more complicated answer, and it's going to be different reasons for different people. So the nice part about this theory is it helps us to think about the different types of influences on human behavior. So this is the graphic that is in your book. And the idea behind Bronfenbrenner's theory is that it's a bunch of layers. You start with the person at the middle, and you kind of go from the more immediate context out to the bigger picture. So in the very middle, we do have the individual themselves, you know, their age, their sex, do they have any special needs, anything like that. But then we get to what's really usually listed as the first level of his theory, which is the microsystem. And these are your immediate environments. So for a child, this could be their school, their peers, their family. So who do they live with or interact with? What is their relationship with those people? You know, do they have a good relationship with their parents or a bad relationship? You know, were the children wanted? Is the family feeling stressed out by money? Are the parents fighting? Something like that. And then for adults, you know, this class could be part of your microsystem. Your job would be part of your microsystem. The place where you live would be part of your microsystem. And then from there, we go to the mesosystem, which isn't really defined in this graphic. But the mesosystem is just the relationship between your different microsystems. So for example, for a child, it might be the relationship between family and school. So do the parents get along with the teacher? Do they trust the teacher? You know, do they feel comfortable going to the teacher if there is a problem? Issues between where the kid lives and their family. Okay, so if they live in an unsafe area, how does this maybe affect the rules that their parents are setting for them? Okay, so that's the mesosystem. The exosystem gets a little more complicated. Okay, this is now a link between two settings. One is one that you have an immediate role in, and one is a setting that you don't. So do the parents, maybe the relationship, say, between the parent's job and the kid's school. Okay, if the parents have really fluctuating work hours or have to work very long hours, the child is not directly involved in the parent's workplace, but this will affect things like whether the parents are able to volunteer in the kid's school. Okay. The Anne Arundel Community College Board of Trustees would be an example of an exosystem for you. Most of you have probably never met the trustees, but they do affect your immediate environments because they affect things like your tuition and fees, who we're going to hire, they determine college policies, things like that. So that's your exosystem. Okay. This is also where we can get into things like the availability of health care. Okay, so, and that's an example of something that can healthcare is an example of something that can relate to multiple levels, right? So there could be just the microsystem. You know, you're sick, can you get to a doctor? Exosystem would start getting more into healthcare policy and how easy it is for you to access care, and are there maybe affordable clinics for people and things like that. Okay. So that's your exosystem. And then finally we have your macrosystem, which is the larger cultural and social context. So this can be American culture, which we like to talk about American culture even though it's not monolithic. It can be a subculture, so the culture of a religious group, of a portion of the country, We can talk about things like urban culture versus rural culture. And this is where we can also get into, again, those kind of broad social contexts. So what is the political climate of the country, that sort of thing. So most people are not interacting day to day with their politicians, but those politicians are clearly setting this culture which is affecting the person. So we have kind of these layers that start at the middle and go out. And again, it's important to remember that a lot of times there's not a nice clear division between one layer and the next, right? So something like school, you know, in this graphic they put school as a microsystem. Well, for a child, their school that they go to is a microsystem, but the exosystem might then involve things like the school board, and the macrosystem might involve things like cultural attitudes about education and the role of public schools, and what value do we place on teachers and that sort of thing. So, you know, the graphic presents them as these nice concrete layers. It's not actually always the case. Okay? And in this course, I don't test you on you know, nice concrete divisions. I'm more looking for, use this model as a way to think about all the different types of variables that influence your development. And then finally, just to make this whole thing more complicated, we have the chronosystem. And in this graphic, it's kind of the 3D element of this image. And the chronosystem has to do with the role of time. So first of all, when events occur in a person's life. You know, we can talk about how people are typically affected by becoming parents, but that's very different if you become a parent for the first time at age 16 or age 26 or age 36. So we can look at when events occur in a person's life, and we can also look at that larger historical context. So for example, right now, the economy is not so great. I mean, it's a little better than it was a few years ago, but it's not so great. Well, somebody who is maybe 20 years old right now is going to perceive that differently and be affected by that differently than somebody who's only a preschooler right now, or somebody who is in their 40s. And so, yeah, they're affected by the economy, but they may have come of age at a time when the economy was doing much better. And so this may affect people's attitudes. This may affect their behaviors. So for example, there's some research that looks at people from different generations and how much do they save versus spend, right? So Generation Xers, so people who kind of came of age in the 80s, early 90s, are famous for overspending, right? They took on large amounts of debt. Turns out the millennials, so people who are in their teens, early 20s right now, actually tend to be much more conservative with their money, and a lot of that is probably affected by the economic context. So I hope that this has given you a good overview of Bronfenbrenner's theory. As always, please, please, please ask if you have any questions. And in the meantime, I hope you all have a great day.